So on this page is an amalgamation of different ADHD references. The first one at the top is the woman talking about spoon theory and fork theory. And it's basically an idea of having only so much energy in a day, and disability people sometimes call themselves spoonies because so many people have used this as a way to convey to other people as well as themselves how much energy they might have. The quickest example I can give is, let's say you might only have, when you wake up, you feel like you've got like 5 forks, and in order to take a shower and get out of bed, it's going to take 7 forks. But once you get that shower, you can gain, say, 10 forks. But the issue, if you've noticed the math, is even if you might gain 3 forks post-shower, if you started off with 5, you can't even begin to get into the shower because you just don't have the energy to. There's another person who's really well known actually for giving a TED Talk, in a sense, about ADHD, and it's Jessica McCabe, who created the YouTube channel How to ADHD. And they've got this nice quote that I pulled that just says, "Shame can keep us from using strategies that could work for us." And I don't know who's on her team, but she also has a lot of great visualizations. So one of them is a woman who's got like a pretty severe sunburn being slapped on the back, and that's just an example of how sensitive someone may be. So for example, if you're a little sensitive, you might notice that there's sounds in the background from a cat to my neighbors moving stuff around. I apologize. You've got good ears. Then there's also references to other cartoons that I really thought did a great job of describing depression, like Hyperbole and a Half by Ali Broche. And then there's another version that's by someone who goes by the name ADHD Alien. And these particular panels, the words are too small for me to read, but it's basically, they go into a description of how they started worrying about whether or not they even know what they want in life, and then could kind of describe in a well-illustrated way how they came to that point where they were such a perfectionist and also were debilitated from being overwhelmed by the kinds of thoughts that they have. And then there's some more goofier examples of ADHD from Forky, who's from Toy Story 4. And then above that is this really amazing film called Inside Out, where you are transported into the brain of a little girl in which there are, I want to say, 5 emotions, and you can see how it controls like their reactions to different things. This totally could have become a whole TV series on their own of different people, different identities, and just going into their minds. And then a lot of people might know Bill Watterson's Calvin and Hobbes. So Calvin was purported to have ADHD. They kind of have this fantastical ideas of games and snowmen and other things. But interestingly, there's a image online that shows Calvin like taking some kind of medications, and then Hobbes turns back into a stuffed animal tiger. But actually that was never officially created by Bill Watterson, who's not necessarily anti-meds. But it's interesting to know that people have used Calvin's image for all sorts of things that were never intended. And then lastly, Donald Trump is a really potent example of someone who, in an anti-hero kind of way, also very likely has ADHD. They're constantly negotiating, they have a poor sense of follow-through, but they are amazing when it comes to like using media. So as much as people don't want to think about this person in a way that might have to have some empathy for this person, normally people describe him as being like a narcissist and all these other things, but I like thinking about how ADHD is definitely not just a superpower, as some of the proponents of it, like Holloway, might say, but depending on the context of this person, in this case, a very powerful white man, ADHD may exhibit itself as, I don't know how to put this, failing up, getting all the resources they need to not be accountable, and yet at the end of the day, the most important thing for people with ADHD is actually accountability. So it makes me question, what would his presidency have been like if, for example, Twitter had actually cooled down his online media presence earlier rather than, I don't know, after he was president? And then there's some other things I was wondering if they'd be worth illustrating. For example, Russell Barkley has this nice quote, "They will now outgrow the need for this external prosthesis." That would be like telling someone, after 30 successful days of using this handicap ramp, it will be removed. I personally also have my own form of prosthesis that is directly inspired by Russell Barkley, and it's a literal clipboard with a pen attached, which was one of his recommendations for people who want to externalize things that normally can't stick in one's brain onto something else. Prosthesis means an extension of one's body. I'm not sure if it also lends itself to describing cyborgs, but it's interesting. Russell Barkley also has quotes like diabetes, it itself, ADHD itself, can't kill you, but it's the complications caused by the disease. And then I was thinking maybe somewhere in the zine I could put some infographics about like the likelihood or the increased likelihood of car crashes due to multitasking. So one interesting thing to note is that Russell Barkley, his origin story, if you will, includes his brother who has ADHD driving drunk at some point and dying in a car crash. So I think he's got some specific baggage that he uses to go into how not great ADHD is, which for a lot of people who are anti-psychiatry, not only do they dislike Russell Barkley because he's not that upfront about taking money from the pharmaceutical companies and industry, but I think it's similar to having autistic parents who speak on the behalf of autistic children, and then sometimes also describe wanting to find, solutions or cures to autism. I don't think Russell Barkley has said that specifically, but he definitely doesn't see it in any positive light, which I think is interesting. Or rather, I should say, all of these viewpoints I think are worth including and balancing.